I don't normally fret about my clothes, but it's my first hanging, and I want to make sure I'm dressed appropriately. Do I go casual, comfortable, tennis shoes, khaki shorts, and sweatshirt, or sexy, which for me is knee-length jean skirt, button-up three-quarter sleeve blouse with the first button undone, and flip-flops? I decide on an in-between, jean skirt, hoodie, and sandals, and I layer in case it gets hot. It's the day after my thesis defense, and in some ways, a hanging seems like a strangely perfect place to be. After 5 years spent working on a collection of essays that aims to capture my most honest, authentic self, I'm ready to experience something different. Nothing could be more different. The hanging is scheduled for 1 p.m. at my friend Lady Morgana's BDSM dungeon, where I've come to take part in my first bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism event, a term I had to Google 6 times to begin to understand. It's been over 2 years since I've been on a date, 5 years since I broke up with my boyfriend I was sure I'd marry. When Lady Morgana opened her dungeon, a brush fire ignited in my friends' minds. If I could just experience something subversive, maybe I'd awaken from my sexual coma. This is my christening. I watched Lady Morgana test the noose first with her own bony neck, then with her business partner's more beefy man neck. There is worry that the noose, which is suspended from the ceiling in the main room, won't support the weight of the client. Just before orgasm, the point at which he hopes to be lowered to the ground from his suspended state of bliss and asphyxiation, then beaten, screamed at, and humiliated, she's worried the rope will catch and his neck will snap like a twig beneath a hiker's shoe. This does nothing for my anxiety. Lady Morgana brushes aside her long, dark hair and hands me several cricket bats, solid, polished pieces of wood with rubber grips, and asks me to take some practice swings. In part, I've been recruited for my brute strength. I'm the only one in my friend circle who can bench press 120 pounds. The one whose idea of a fun Friday night is beating the hell out of a punching bag, eating a bag of Doritos, and timing myself to see how long I can hold my breath. The client, a man who has traveled from England to South Florida on business, is insistent the hanging happen. He's well aware of the risks, he tells her on the phone, but this is his thing. And my friend is the only dominatrix he's found who's willing to give it a try. As Lady Morgana paces the warehouse, cell phone to her ear, I twist the biggest of the bats in my hand as I wander into the various fetish rooms. There's the dentist chamber, with metal table, electronic chair, and retractable hanging light. I hate the dentist. This room is my worst nightmare. There's the nursery, which will one day have a man-sized baby swing, changing table with diapers, and a collection of huge pacifiers. And the electrocution room, akin to the place the screaming girl ends up in the final scenes of a Freddy Krueger movie. Around the corner is the boudoir, with a canopy bed, clawfoot bathtub, and rack of huge feather boas, man-sized silk negligee, and an extra-large dress made out of metal chains. Upstairs is the Catholic room, with its life-size crucifix, its tattered Bible, and matching floggers. This is a world of worlds, a place apart from the one I know, which involves trips to Target, TGI Fridays, and the beach in Surfside I specifically go to on Saturdays because it's mostly populated by Orthodox Jewish people in ankle-length skirts. I begin to sweat through the layers. I want to take off the hoodie, but risking any exposure, even an elbow, adds a new dimension to my mounting queasiness. I suddenly wish I were home, watching cooking shows on PBS, taking notes on how to activate yeast while Julia Child, circa 1991, towers over her next culinary creation. I want to be in my bedroom, screening my calls, dipping Twix bars in a tub of icing. This is what I know, what's comfortable. Lady Morgana's partner now has the noose on the floor and is testing the rope around his waist with his body weight. He lunges against it and pushes, then jerks back. I try to imagine how this could possibly work with a naked man's neck, but the only image I come up with is of Tony Blair lying dead on the dungeon floor, his neck kinked like a poorly wound garden hose. I look away. I walk up to the mahogany china cabinet in the main room. Its shelves contain anal beads, lips, and black dildos arranged in descending size order. I study the contents as if I'm staring into a vending machine on the turnpike, searching for the peanut M&Ms. What did Lady Morgana tell the people at the Faith Farm Ministries thrift store where she bought the furniture, where the workers tell you how much Jesus loves you as they load your car? Careful with that piece. It's where the vibrating nipple clamps will be stored. After dozens of test runs and over an hour spent watching Lady Morgana pace as she talks to the begging client, she reluctantly tells him it's just too risky. She looks depleted as she hangs up the phone. She's out $500, and it's not every day that someone requests a hanging. I gently set down the bat, which I've been whipping around in warm-up swings for so long it feels like I've pulled every muscle in my shoulder, and head to my car. As I walk into the alleyway behind the dungeon, I feel like half-set jello, that unsteady in-between state of being too wiggly to settle down, but not settled enough to attempt any significant movement. Driving down Biscayne Boulevard, I pass the usual chain of car dealerships and Pollo Tropicals. I'm torn between slaps of intense relief and nudges of regret. I lost the one chance I'll ever have to take part in a hanging. My thoughts ignite with could-have beens. I imagine the waif of a man being lowered to the floor. I imagine him cowering in front of me as I wail on him. He's screaming for me to stop, pleading. I don't give in. I hit him harder, harder, till I scream with my American accent, and he screams with his British accent, and retracts into a twitching heap on the cool cement. Then, I tell him he's a pathetic piece of shit, a little girl. I tell him his penis is funny looking, like a tiny chicken waddle. I tell him whatever he seems to want or need to hear to make this experience genuine. I know the rules. Avoid the spine, avoid the head. As he curls into a fetal position, I kick his thighs, spit on him, and walk away. In the corner of the dungeon, I linger behind the cricket bat and tell myself I did this for him. As I pull into my apartment building, I wonder why everything in my life has to fall into one polar end of the spectrum or the other. Why can't I just go on a damn date like a normal human? Isn't there any gray area between hanging and beating some naked stranger and getting a cup of coffee at Starbucks with the hot guy from the gym? When I walk into my apartment, I set my purse on the counter and grab 4 slices of leftover pizza. I make my way into the living room with plate in hand. There, on the table, in a lopsided stack, sits the mound of pages I've written. The muffled sound of my cell phone's ring cuts through the silent afternoon. I don't answer it. Instead, I stare at my marked up thesis. Whoever called tries again, leaves a message. I think about the years spent generating and revising those essays, whittling them down, trying to get at my essential self. How little they tell.